The chamber of the Galactic Council was silent, but the silence was heavy, like the air before a storm. Hundreds of alien eyes stared at the central platform, where the High Speaker of the Council prepared to give the final words. The air was filled with cold light from the stars outside, pouring through the glass walls of the chamber. Around the round table sat leaders of the strongest empires of the galaxy. Their ships filled the skies of many worlds. Their armies numbered in the billions. Their power stretched from one end of the galaxy to the other. And tonight they were united by one single purpose, the end of humanity. The High Speaker's voice echoed across the chamber, calm and sharp. The humans will not survive. They are a young race, reckless and fragile. Their weapons are crude. Their ships are weak. They fight with emotion, not with order. We predict their fall within hours. His words were not questioned. The other council members nodded slowly, some showing the curl of amusement on their alien lips. To them, this was not a debate. It was a fact written in stone. A hollow image of Earth appeared above the table. Blue seas, white clouds, green lands. A planet full of life, but to the council it was only a target. Around Earth, fleets of alien warships were already in position. They had arrived in silence, cloaked by advanced technology, their weapons charged and ready. They had been ordered not to strike until the council gave the word. The prediction had been made. The humans had hours, no more. One counselor from the Zathari Empire spoke with a hiss. Their species fights with fire, but fire burns fast. They will resist, yes, but resistance is a small thing. Our ships are millions. Their ships are hundreds. They will break. The chamber rumbled with soft laughter. Another voice, deep and heavy, joined in. Humans dream too much. They believe courage wins wars. They forget that numbers, machines, and power decide everything. But even as they mocked, some counselors looked uneasy. Reports from scouts had spoken of strange human tactics in small border battles. One scout captain had warned, "They do not fight as we do. They move in ways our computers cannot predict." But those reports were buried under pride. The council could not believe such a young race could threaten their order. Pride was stronger than fear. The High Speaker raised a long arm and silenced the chamber. We must not waste time with doubt. Humanity will be crushed. Within 3 hours of the first strike, their fleets will be dust. Their cities will fall and their people will kneel. He looked across the chamber, eyes glowing like fire. This is not a war. This is a correction. Humanity has grown too bold. They spread too far. They must learn the truth of their weakness. The words carried across the chamber like a hammer. Council scribes marked the prediction into the official records. Humanity defeated in less than 3 hours. The council had spoken. In their history, the council had never been wrong. Empires rose and fell at their word. Stars burned and went dark while they ruled. Their predictions were treated as law itself. Far above Earth, hidden fleets waited. Giant alien warships stretched for miles, their dark hulls glowing with red lights. Dreadnoughts armed with planet-killer weapons stood ready. Thousands of cruisers and destroyers filled every orbit, covering the skies like a storm. Each ship was stronger than a human vessel. Each fleet was larger than all of Earth's fleets combined. To any observer, the outcome was clear. The humans had no chance. The council watched the live images from orbit. They could see human satellites detecting shadows in the sky. They could see Earth's small defense fleet powering up their weapons. A few hundred warships rising above the blue world, compared to the endless alien armada. To the council, it looked like insects preparing to face giants. A deep voice from the Gulf Dominion broke the silence. It is almost a pity. They are a brave species. They dream of reaching the stars. But bravery does not win wars. Another added with cruel laughter. They think themselves clever. They build machines and fight with spirit. But in the end, they are still animals. Animals cannot defeat the council. The High Speaker closed his eyes and made the final words. Let it be recorded. Humanity's fall begins now. In hours, their story will end. His hand came down on the control. The order was given. Across the void, alien fleets unlocked their weapons. Energy cannons lit up like suns. Planet-killer missiles turned their tips toward Earth. War drums of 1,000 empires echoed in silence through the stars. The countdown had started. Humanity had hours, nothing more. But far below, on the small blue planet, humans looked up at the sky. They saw the shadows. They heard the warnings. And yet no one bent the knee. The council predicted doom, but humanity had faced doom before. And when humanity faced the impossible, something strange always happened, something no prediction could see. The council chamber glowed with pride and certainty, but if one listened closely under the silence of confidence, there was a faint whisper of unease. For the galaxy had just set the stage for war, and the first shot had not even been fired. The council believed they had written the ending. They believed the story was already closed. But what they did not know was simple. Humanity had never cared for predictions. Humanity had always written its own ending. And when the war began, the galaxy would learn the truth. The news of the council's prediction spread across the stars like fire through dry grass. In every human colony, in every outpost, on every mining station orbiting far-off suns, the message was the same. Humanity will fall within hours. For a moment, there was silence. People listened in shock, their faces pale, their hearts heavy. On Mars, families huddled together, staring at the sky as if death itself would arrive any second. On Titan's colonies, engineers paused their work and whispered, "Is this the end?" On Earth, cities buzzed with fear, the streets filled with voices asking one question: can we survive? Yet the silence did not last long. Humanity had always been afraid. Fear was familiar to them. Fear had followed them through centuries of war, disease, hunger, and disaster. But fear was never the end. Fear was only the beginning. Inside the command center, deep under the mountains of Earth, leaders of the human fleet gathered. The room was dark, filled with glowing maps of the sky. Red dots marked the alien fleets, countless in number, surrounding Earth like predators. Only a small cluster of blue dots marked the human defense fleet. It looked hopeless. The officers knew it. The soldiers knew it. The whole planet knew it. But hopeless was something humans understood well. One admiral, his uniform worn from years of battle, stood before his people. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the room with steel inside it. "They predict our end in hours. Then let us show them how humans use minutes." Those words lit a spark. Around him, young officers lifted their heads. Old veterans clenched their fists. Messages were sent to every ship in orbit: "Stand ready. This is our fight." Above the planet, human warships began to move. Carriers, cruisers, and destroyers lifted from the atmosphere, their engines burning bright against the black of space. They were not as large as alien warships. They were not as many. But each ship carried a crew that refused to surrender. Each one carried hearts that would not kneel. From the streets of Earth, people looked up and saw their fleet rising. Children pointed at the glowing trails of engines, cheering through their fear. Families prayed, not for safety, but for courage. Humanity knew it stood against giants, but still it stood. The council watched from their chambers, the image of Earth's defense filling the air above their round table. To them, the sight was amusing. A few hundred ships, thin and small, rising to face millions. It was like ants marching against storms. The high speaker shook his head with pity. "They choose to fight," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Then let them burn." But not every counselor smiled. Some leaned forward, studying the human fleet. They saw the speed of their formations, the strange patterns of their movements, the restless energy that was unlike any other species. It was not order. It was not chaos. It was something in between, something they could not measure, and though they would never say it aloud, a whisper of doubt touched their hearts. Back on Earth's orbit, Captain Elias of the warship Resolute stared at the enemy fleet. His crew waited, their hands shaking but steady at their posts. His voice came calm through the intercom. "They think we are weak. They think numbers make them strong. But remember, machines fight with numbers. Humans fight with will, and today, we will remind the galaxy who we are." His words spread not just to his ship, but to others as well. Commanders echoed them, crews repeated them, and soon the entire fleet hummed with the same fire. The alien armada shifted. Enormous battleships moved into position, their weapons glowing with power. The void lit up as if stars were being born. Humanity's fleet held steady, waiting, engines humming, weapons charged. The first strike could come at any moment. On Earth, people gathered in front of screens, watching the skies. They knew many of their sons and daughters were in those ships. They knew death was near, yet not a single voice called for surrender. The people of Earth had chosen their answer. If this was the end, it would not be a quiet one. In the council chamber, a Zathari general laughed. "They are fools. They think courage will shield them." But another alien, quieter and older, leaned closer to the hollow image. His voice was almost a whisper. No, they are not fools. They are dangerous. The humans had not fired a shot yet. But already, something about their silence, their waiting, their steady gaze at certain death made the galaxy uneasy. The High Speaker raised his hand in final command. Begin the assault. Humanity's minutes are almost over. And across the orbit of Earth, alien weapons powered to their full. Energy cannons burned. Missiles armed. Warships locked their aim. The skies shook with the weight of destruction ready to fall. But in that moment, on every human ship, every soldier breathed together. Their hearts beat as one. They were not thinking of defeat. They were not thinking of survival. They were thinking of the fight. They were thinking of the one chance to prove the Council wrong. The Council had predicted humanity's end. Humanity had chosen something else. The first blast had not yet been fired. The countdown had not yet reached 0. But already in that tense and burning silence, something shifted. The aliens believed they had surrounded a weak race, but what they had truly surrounded was something far older, far sharper, and far more dangerous. They had surrounded the will of humanity. And that will was about to strike back. The first shot came from the alien fleet. It was not a warning, not a test, but a strike meant to tear Earth's defenses apart. A spear of energy, bright as a newborn sun, crossed the void and slammed into the lead human destroyer. The explosion bloomed like a flower of fire, shaking the silence of space. The council chamber roared with satisfaction as they watched. "One ship down," the High Speaker said calmly. Many more to follow. But on the bridge of the carrier Dauntless, no one moved in despair. Instead, Captain Mira leaned forward, her eyes sharp as blades. "Mark their firing pattern. Watch carefully." The crew scrambled, sensors glowing, recording every spark and every tremor in the void. The alien fleet advanced, confident. Hundreds of warships opened fire, turning the darkness into a storm of fire. Human shields flickered. Ships shuddered under the force, and explosions ripped through the silence. The council leaned back in their seats, smug. It looked as they had promised. Humanity's defenses crumbling, the fleet breaking, the end rushing in. But then something happened that the council had not predicted. The human fleet did not scatter. They did not break. They moved closer together, weaving into a formation so strange that alien computers hesitated to process it. Ships dove in and out of each other's paths, crossing fire zones, creating patterns that seemed chaotic, yet every move carried purpose. Captain Elias of the Resolute shouted, "Lock the rail cannons! Aim for their shield nodes! Fire when ready!" A thunder rolled through space. Human weapons, primitive in the eyes of the Council, struck with terrifying precision. The first alien cruiser blinked with sparks, its shields collapsing under the kinetic force. Then in a blaze of fire, its reactor ruptured, tearing the ship apart. For the first time in centuries, the Council chamber went silent. Another shot followed. Another cruiser fell. And then another. The alien commanders watching from their dreadnoughts blinked in confusion. Human weapons were not supposed to cut through their shields so easily. The Council had calculated every possible outcome. They had not calculated this. On Earth, billions of eyes widened as the screens showed alien ships burning, one after another. Children gasped. Families cheered. A chant began to rise. "We can fight. We can win." The aliens, in their overconfidence, pushed harder. A swarm of fighters broke from their lines, screaming toward the human fleet like a tide of fire. Captain Mira ordered her own squadrons forward. Tiny human fighters launched from carriers, outnumbered 5-1, their pilots strapped in with sweat running down their brows. The battle became chaos. Alien fighters danced with lasers cutting across the dark, while human pilots rolled their ships in impossible spins, using every ounce of creativity to dodge fire. Alien pilots fought with calculation. Human pilots fought with desperation, and desperation was unpredictable. One young pilot, call sign Hawk, dove straight into the swarm, weaving between enemy ships. His voice cracked over the comms. "Follow me through the gap." He cut hard left, pulling 24 alien fighters into his trail. At the last second, he pulled up. Behind him, a human destroyer unleashed a wall of missiles. The alien ships had no time to react. The swarm was erased in one burning wave. On the council floor, the Zathari general hissed in anger. "How? Their weapons are crude. Their ships are fragile." But the elder voice spoke again, softer, more cautious. "Crude weapons, fragile ships. Yet they fight as if the stars themselves bend for them. The alien armada continued to fire. Dozens of human ships burned, but dozens more struck back. Each human ship fought like it was alive, each captain choosing moves no machine could predict. The aliens relied on algorithms, patterns, flawless order. The humans relied on instinct, chaos, and stubborn will. Admiral Rain, commanding the entire human fleet from the Vigilant, leaned over the glowing map. He whispered almost to himself, "They think war is numbers. They forgot war is survival." Then louder, to every ship, "Push into their flank.
Strike now."
The human fleet surged forward in a spear formation. Alien warships, programmed to expect retreat, hesitated for precious seconds. It was enough. Human cannons roared. Missiles carved paths through enemy hulls, and alien dreadnoughts shook under the storm. In just minutes, the tide began to turn. The invincible alien fleet was bleeding. Their shields cracked. Their formations shattered. And most of all, their certainty broke. The high speaker rose in disbelief. "This is impossible. They are supposed to fall in hours." His voice echoed with anger, but beneath it was fear. For the first time, the council watched not the fall of humanity, but the fall of their own prediction. On the Resolute, Captain Elias smiled grimly as another alien ship split apart in fire. He looked at his crew and said, "Remember this moment. The galaxy thinks we are already dead. Let's show them how dangerous the dead can be." The humans fought harder, and as they did, the impossible became reality. Alien fleets, once certain of their dominance, began to break apart. Commanders barked orders, but their soldiers hesitated. Doubt crept into their hearts. The war was supposed to end in hours. But now, as alien wreckage burned across Earth's orbit, the galaxy saw something it had never seen before. Humanity was not falling. Humanity was rising, and the Council's prophecy, spoken with such arrogance, was beginning to crumble in minutes. The alien fleets were in chaos. Wreckage floated across Earth's orbit, glowing like dying stars. Ships that had once been symbols of power were now broken husks, drifting in silence. The Council watched in disbelief, their perfect prediction unraveling. For centuries, no prophecy of theirs had ever been wrong, but before their very eyes, humans were rewriting destiny. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Admiral Rain stared at the streams of data pouring across the holoscreens. Alien ships were regrouping, forming new lines, but their movements were slower now, cautious. He could sense it. The invincible armada was bleeding, and fear had begun to seep into their hearts. Still, the human fleet was outnumbered 10-1. Numbers alone could crush them unless something more tipped the scales. That something had been hidden for years. Humanity's secret weapon, kept in silence beneath the mountains of Earth, stored in vaults on Luna, whispered only in code between admirals. The aliens had no idea. The Council, for all its wisdom, had never even guessed. "Activate Project Tempest," Rain ordered, his voice steady. The officers around him froze, their eyes wide. For a moment no one moved, as if speaking the name alone carried danger. Then, with trembling hands, the command was entered. Across the fleet, secure signals blinked alive, green lights shining like new stars. On board the Resolute, Captain Elias watched as the ship's weapons powered in ways no one outside Earth had ever seen. Cannons glowed with an unnatural light. Torpedo bays hummed with silent energy. His second officer whispered, "Sir, is it true? Are we really using it now?" Elias nodded. "It's time they learn what humans have been hiding." Project Tempest was born from desperation decades ago. While other civilizations built bigger ships and heavier shields, humans had chosen a different path. They had studied the cracks in the galaxy's great weapons, the flaws in their endless shields, the blind spots of their machines. Instead of building something larger, they had built something sharper. The first volley fired. It was not energy, not plasma, not any weapon the galaxy knew. It was a storm of quantum rail cannons firing projectiles wrapped in folded space. They did not travel through the void. They cut through it, arriving at their targets almost instantly. Alien shields designed to absorb energy did nothing. The rounds punched through, tearing ships apart as if their armor was paper. On the council floor, panic spread. One counselor shouted, "Impossible! No mass driver can fire at that speed." Another cried, "Shields are useless. They bypass our defenses." The high speaker's eyes burned with rage. How? How did they build such weapons without our knowing? But no one answered. For the first time, the council had no words, and it was not just the rail cannons. Human torpedoes launched, but these were not normal torpedoes. They exploded in silent waves of EMP pulses, frying alien computers, shutting down targeting systems, leaving ships blind and helpless. Alien vessels spun in confusion, their weapons dark, while human warships carved them apart with precise fire. On Earth, billions cheered as the screens showed alien ships collapsing in seconds. For the first time, hope spread faster than fear. Children shouted from rooftops, soldiers on the ground raised their fists, and even those who thought the end was near began to whisper, "We can win." The alien commanders, desperate, tried to adapt. They ordered their ships to scatter, to spread wide, to overwhelm with sheer size. But the humans had trained for this. Their ships moved like hunters, striking fast, vanishing, then striking again. Human captains fought not with algorithms, but with instincts. They thought like predators, not machines. In the cockpit of his fighter, Hawk laughed as he spun through enemy fire. "They can't keep up. They're too slow." His squadron dove straight at a dreadnought, unleashing torpedoes at point-blank range. The explosion ripped the massive ship in half, sending pieces tumbling into the dark. The council chamber shook with voices of disbelief. "They were supposed to fall in hours," one counselor screamed. "This is not possible." Another whispered, almost trembling, What if their strength was never in numbers or machines? What if their strength was in being human?" Captain Mira, watching the alien fleets falter on her screens, spoke to her crew. "They called us fragile. They called us reckless. Maybe they're right. But fragility bends where strength breaks. Recklessness moves where order freezes. That is why we fight. That is why we win." And with every passing minute, humanity proved her right. The alien fleet was no longer advancing. It was retreating. Ships broke formation, captains fleeing in panic. The skies that had once been covered in fire now showed burning wrecks and fading signals. Admiral Rain gave the final order. "Push them back. Let them remember Earth is not prey." The fleet surged forward, striking with a fury the galaxy had never seen. Dreadnoughts burned. Cruisers fell. The so-called invincible armada crumbled under the storm. In the council chamber, the High Speaker could only stare, his prediction shattered, his pride broken. The humans had not just resisted. They had destroyed the myth of council supremacy in minutes. Back on Earth, the people shouted, their voices rising in one cry that reached the skies. "We will not kneel." The secret was out now. Humanity had shown its hidden blade, and the galaxy for the first time in ages trembled not with arrogance but with fear. The battlefield above Earth was no longer silent black space, it was fire and chaos. Alien wrecks drifted like broken monuments, their glowing debris scattering across the void. But still the enemy pressed forward. Dreadnoughts larger than cities advanced, their commanders desperate to crush humanity before their fear spread any further. Inside the council chamber, panic simmered beneath pride. Counselors shouted over one another, demanding answers. "Why are the humans still fighting?" One hissed. "Their numbers are nothing. Their weapons are impossible." Another counselor snarled. "This is not order, it is madness. They fight as if they do not care about survival." And that was the truth. Humanity's strength was not in numbers. It was not in shields or cannons. It was in the way they fought. Reckless, unpredictable, wild. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elias stood tall, his hands gripping the command rail. "Bring us into the flank. Push through their formation. If they expect us to retreat, we'll move forward." His crew looked at him as if he were insane, but they obeyed. Engines flared, and the Resolute shot into the heart of the alien line. The aliens reacted too slowly. Their ships, programmed to predict logical moves, did not expect the madness of humans. The Resolute slid between two cruisers close enough to scrape hulls. Its cannons roared, tearing one cruiser apart before its partner even fired. Elias's voice rang through the comms. "Remember, they fight like machines. We fight like humans. That is our edge." Nearby, the carrier Dauntless launched another wave of fighters. Hawk led the charge, laughing through the chaos. "They can't read us. Fly like lightning, break their lines." His squadron twisted into spirals, rolling and diving in ways alien computers couldn't calculate. Missiles struck from impossible angles, shredding enemy interceptors. To the aliens, it looked like chaos, but to humans, it was instinct, art, survival. On the Vigilant, Admiral Rain watched as his fleet pressed into the enemy. "Do you see it?" he said to his staff, pointing to the enemy formations. "They're falling apart because they don't understand us. Every human ship moves differently. Every captain fights their own way. They can't predict chaos. Alien commanders, furious, tried to adapt. They reprogrammed targeting systems, changed formations, even attempted to mimic human movements. But the harder they tried, the worse it became. Order turned to hesitation. Hesitation turned to disaster. Their perfect lines fractured, leaving openings the humans drove into again and again. On Earth, the people watched in awe. Every alien explosion that lit the sky felt like thunder in their hearts. Crowds filled streets cheering and shouting. For the first time, humanity believed not just in survival but in victory. The Council, however, sat in silence now. Their arrogance cracked with every alien ship that died. The High Speaker's face was pale, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. This was supposed to be over, he muttered. They were supposed to break, but humanity did not break. Humanity bent, twisted, struck, and rose again. A single destroyer, the Ironclad, took the center of the fight. Surrounded by 10 alien cruisers, it should have been annihilated. Instead, its captain laughed into the comms. If this is my last stand, then let's make it count. The Ironclad spun through the void, its engines screaming, firing torpedoes in every direction. 4 alien ships burned. 2 collided, confused by the wild maneuvering. The destroyer went down in flames, but not before it took 7 enemies with it. On the Council floor, gasps filled the chamber. No machine, no empire, no Council fleet had ever fought like this. To throw everything away for one strike, to embrace chaos as a weapon, it was madness. But it was working. Admiral Rain gave his next command. Collapse their center. Push them back until they run. Let them remember this day. His fleet surged like a tide, every ship moving with its own rhythm, its own fury. Dreadnoughts exploded. Cruisers shattered, fighters scattered in panic. In just minutes, the invincible alien armada was retreating, not advancing. But victory came at a cost. Human ships burned too. Families on Earth wept as names of lost crews were reported. Yet even in grief, they stood taller, knowing those sacrifices had carved a new future. Humanity was proving something greater than survival. They were proving they could not be controlled, not by fear, not by numbers, not by predictions. In the chamber of the Council, silence finally fell. The High Speaker lowered his head, his voice heavy. We said they would fall in hours. Yet they have turned the war in minutes. His words echoed like a funeral bell, not for humanity, but for the Council's pride. On the battlefield, Hawk's voice crackled through the comms as he led his battered squadron back toward Earth. We held the line. We broke them. The galaxy will remember this day, and the galaxy would. Across distant colonies and hidden worlds, whispers spread. The humans were not broken. They were dangerous. They were unpredictable. They were the storm that no one could see coming. The war was not over. But in that turning point, the balance of power had shifted. Humanity had shown its true weapon. Not technology, not numbers, but chaos itself. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to fear what humans might do next. Fear spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, news of the battle reached alien worlds. It carried not through official channels, but in whispers, in panicked transmissions, in intercepted messages that no one could silence. The Council had promised a quick victory. They had promised that humanity would fall in hours. But instead, in minutes, the humans had turned the tide. On the war-torn front above Earth, alien soldiers who once fought with pride now hesitated at their posts. Crews inside dreadnoughts glanced nervously at each other, their hands trembling over controls. Captains who had once laughed at humanity's weakness now shouted frantic orders, their voices cracking under pressure. Every sensor update showed the same thing. Human ships pressing forward, alien ships burning. The Council tried to control the message. They sent broadcasts declaring the humans were merely lucky, or that victory was still certain. But no one believed them. Everyone had seen the wreckage. Everyone had seen alien cruisers crumble under human cannons, shields failing against weapons they did not understand. On the planet Vera, home of the proud Zathari Empire, crowds gathered in silence around public screens. They watched grainy footage of human fighters weaving through swarms, cutting down ships 3 times their size. One old warrior muttered, "Machines cannot fight like that. They are too alive." His words spread like fire through the crowd. On the icy world of Talvros, miners in the Dominion colonies whispered in the tunnels, "If the humans can defeat the Council's fleets, what chance do we have against them?" For generations, the Dominion had ruled them with fear, but fear had shifted now. It no longer pointed downward. It pointed toward Earth. The council itself was fracturing. Behind the polished walls of the great chamber, arguments raged. "We must strike harder with everything we have," one shouted. Another countered, "We have already sent our greatest fleet, and they are falling." Some demanded negotiations, others demanded extermination. For the first time in centuries, the council had no single voice. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity stood taller than ever. The people who had been told they would be destroyed in hours now cheered as alien fleets retreated. Screens across cities replayed the explosions of enemy dreadnoughts. Children painted stars on their faces, shouting, "We are the storm." Families lit candles for the ships lost, but their tears mixed with pride. They knew their dead had bought something greater than survival. They had bought fear, and it was spreading across the galaxy. Inside the carrier, dauntless Captain Mira addressed her weary crew. They thought courage was weakness. They thought instinct was madness. But courage makes us strong. Madness makes us unpredictable, and that unpredictability is what makes the galaxy afraid. Her crew, bruised and exhausted, erupted in cheers. Even those who could barely stand lifted their voices. The aliens, however, were not cheering. In the command deck of a shattered dreadnought, an alien admiral sat in silence, staring at the broken screens. His ship drifted dead, its engines ruined by human torpedoes. His officers waited for orders, but none came. Finally, in a voice heavy with despair, he whispered, "We have awakened something we do not understand." His officers looked at him in shock. Admirals never admitted defeat. But defeat was no longer something to deny. It was everywhere. Across alien worlds, propaganda machines strained to spin the story. They called humanity reckless, unstable, dangerous to themselves. But their words betrayed the truth. Dangerous. That was the new name whispered across the stars. Humanity was no longer the fragile young race. They were the unknown predator, the one every empire had ignored until its teeth sank in. In the council chamber, the high speaker tried to restore control. His voice shook, but he forced it steady. "Yes, they have won a battle, but they cannot win a war. We are still greater. We are still many." But even as he spoke, counselors shifted uncomfortably. For centuries, the council's words had been law. Now those words felt hollow. Admiral Rain, watching from the Vigilant, understood the truth before the council did. He looked over the holomap, the wreckage of alien ships littering orbit, and said quietly, "They came to break us with fear. But it is they who are afraid." His staff, battered but alive, nodded in grim agreement. In alien taverns, in worker camps, in hidden corners of the galaxy, the same whispers grew. If humans can destroy the Council's fleet, perhaps the Council is not invincible. Rebellion, once unthinkable, began to flicker in small sparks. The war had not only changed humanity's place in the galaxy, it had shaken the foundation of every empire that had knelt before the Council's will. Humanity had become a symbol, not of fragility, not of weakness, but of defiance. And so fear spread. Not just fear of human weapons, but fear of human ideas. Fear of a species that refused to kneel. Fear of a people who fought not with numbers, but with something no calculation could measure. The Council had predicted humanity's fall. Instead, they had unleashed a storm, and storms could not be controlled. The war that was supposed to last hours was ending in minutes. Above Earth, the void was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Alien dreadnoughts, once symbols of eternal power, now drifted broken and silent. Cruisers exploded in chain reactions, sending fragments of molten metal across orbit. Fighters scattered like insects trying to flee the storm. And in the center of it all, the human fleet advanced like a knife cutting through the dark. Admiral Rain stood on the command deck of the Vigilant, his face lit by the glow of burning wrecks. His voice was calm, but every word struck with steel. "Do not let them regroup. End this now." The order spread across the human fleet. Carriers launched their final waves of fighters. Destroyers surged forward with reckless speed, and battleships unleashed everything they had left. The sky lit with fire as Earth's defenders turned hunters. On the Resolute, Captain Elias pointed at the enemy dreadnought that still fought on, its cannons blazing wildly. "Target its core. We'll put it down together." His gunners locked rail cannons, firing in unison. The projectiles ripped through the massive vessel one after another, until its engines burst. A final explosion tore the dreadnought apart, its shadow vanishing forever. Elias exhaled, his voice grim. "Another giant falls. Alien commanders were shouting, begging their fleets to hold. But their soldiers no longer listened. Panic had consumed them. Ships turned to retreat, ignoring orders. Captains abandoned formations, fleeing for survival. The perfect war machine of the Council had dissolved into chaos. And still, humanity pushed forward. In the cockpit of his fighter, Hawk chased down a squadron of alien interceptors. They broke formation, scattering into random paths, but Hawk grinned. Now you know how it feels to fight chaos. He cut down 2 with rapid bursts and drove the rest straight into the fire of a waiting human destroyer. On the Council's viewing screens, the image was unbearable. Minutes ago they had watched with arrogance, certain of victory. Now they watched their armada die. The High Speaker's hands trembled on the edge of his throne. How can this be? They are not stronger than us. They are not greater. His words cracked, heavy with disbelief. And yet, they are winning. Counselors looked away in shame and fear. For centuries, the Council's predictions were law. To see one fall apart was more than defeat. It was blasphemy. Humanity had not only broken the fleet, they had broken the Council's illusion of control. On Earth, the people filled the streets, watching the skies. Explosions painted the night like fireworks of war. Every alien ship that fell brought roars of joy, tears of pride, and chants that shook the cities. "We will not kneel," echoed across continents. Humanity for once was united not by fear but by defiance. The alien fleets, once endless, were now in ruins. Of the thousands of ships that had arrived to erase Earth, only fragments remained. Some fled into the dark, others burned in orbit, and a few were captured, their crews stunned into silence. Admiral Rain gave the final call. Broadcast to all ships, cease pursuit. The battle is over. His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir, we could destroy every last one." Rain shook his head. "No, let them carry the story. Let them spread the fear. The galaxy must know that we ended their war in minutes." And so the human fleet slowed, weapons dimming. Survivors collected their wounded, repaired their hulls, and honored their dead. The battle was won, but the message was the true victory. In the Council chamber, the silence was suffocating. No one spoke. No one dared to. They had predicted humanity's fall. They had promised their destruction. Yet before their very eyes, the opposite had happened. Humanity had risen, and the Council had been powerless to stop it. At last, one counselor whispered the truth that all feared to speak. If they can do this now, what will they become in a century? The word sent a chill through the chamber. For the first time, the galaxy feared the future, not of the Council, not of the empires, but of Earth. Captain Mira stood before her weary crew on the Dauntless. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle, yet every soul aboard leaned forward to hear. "Today we proved them wrong. Today we showed them who we are. They thought we would fall in hours, but we ended their war in minutes." Her crew erupted in cheers, their voices carrying across the comms, echoing ship to ship, until the entire human fleet shouted as one. Above them, the stars burned bright, watching silently, but they were no longer the same stars. They now marked the birth of something new, a chapter where humanity was no longer prey, no longer fragile, no longer ignored. The Council had miscalculated. They had looked into the future and seen weakness, but what they failed to see was humanity's greatest weapon, the refusal to be written out of history. And as the last alien wreck burned into ash, one truth echoed across the galaxy. Humanity had not only survived, humanity had become the storm. The battlefield above Earth had gone quiet. The firestorms of war faded, leaving only drifting wreckage, glowing debris, and the silence of the void. For the first time in living memory, the fleets of the Council had been broken. Dreadnoughts that once cast shadows across stars were now shattered shells. Cruisers lay in pieces, scattered like bones of giants. The human fleet held position, battered but unbroken. Engines flickered, hulls scarred, but their banners still burned in the black. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had survived. No, more than that. They had won. On Earth, crowds filled the streets, staring up at the skies where glowing fragments streaked across the atmosphere like falling stars. They were not afraid anymore. They cheered, they sang, they cried together. Children painted human ships on walls. People waved flags from their rooftops, and the chant spread from continent to continent, echoing across oceans. "We will not kneel." Yet even as joy rose from Earth, fear rose across the galaxy. The Council's fleets had been the hammer of order, the weapon of control. They had crushed countless rebellions, erased civilizations, and ruled with predictions that had never failed. But now, the impossible had happened. The Council had predicted humanity's fall in hours, only to watch humanity end the war in minutes. And if the Council could be wrong once, what else could be wrong? In the grand chamber of the Council, silence weighed heavier than steel. The High Speaker sat frozen, his hands trembling on the cold table. His voice was hoarse, broken by disbelief. We promised their end. We swore the humans would be crushed. Now the galaxy has seen the truth. Our word is shattered. Around him, councilors shifted uneasily. Some shouted for vengeance, demanding another war. Others whispered of surrender, of negotiation, of retreat. The unity of centuries had cracked in a single day. Their fear was not only of humanity, it was of themselves. If the Council could not keep order, what power did they still hold? On the Vigilant, Admiral Rain stood in silence, gazing at the hollow map of orbit littered with enemy wrecks. His staff waited for his command, but his eyes were distant. He knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. Slowly he spoke, his voice low but steady. Today we have earned more than survival. We have earned fear. The galaxy will no longer see us as prey. They will see us as predators. Captain Elias of the Resolute gave a speech to his exhausted crew, his voice echoing through the corridors. We stood against giants, and giants fell. We fought chaos against order, and chaos triumphed. The Council thought we were fragile. They thought we were predictable. They thought we were doomed. They were wrong. Remember this day, for the galaxy will never forget it. His words carried across the fleet, recorded and replayed in transmissions that spread faster than light. Soon across colonies, across distant outposts, across human settlements scattered among the stars, the same words lit fires in the hearts of billions. Humanity was no longer a small voice among empires. Humanity had become a storm no wall could hold back. But storms do not stay still. They spread. Already alien worlds trembled. In the shadow markets of the Dominion, smugglers whispered nervously, if the humans can break the Council, maybe the Council is not untouchable. On the mining worlds of the Zathari, workers who had lived in chains for centuries began to dream. If humans can defy them, why not us? Rebellion, once unthinkable, now stirred like embers waiting for flame. The galaxy had always feared the Council, but now the galaxy feared something else, something new, something unpredictable. Humanity. Admiral Rain turned to his officers. We will rebuild. We will grow stronger. They will come again, and when they do, they will not face the same humans they fought today. They will face a people who write their own future. In the Council chamber, the High Speaker lowered his head in defeat. His words were hollow yet heavy. For the first time in history, the galaxy is afraid of Earth. And he was right. Humanity had bled, had sacrificed, had nearly burned, but they had not broken. They had risen, and in their rise they had shaken the galaxy itself. The war was not just a battle won. It was a warning written in fire across the stars. Do not underestimate humanity. As Earth's night sky glittered with the wreckage of fallen giants, children pointed upward and asked, what happens now? Parents looked into the burning heavens, unable to answer, but deep in every heart a single thought echoed, if we can end their war in minutes. What else can we do? The galaxy did not yet know the answer, but it would. For humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not as victims, not as prey, but as the storm that no empire, no council, no prediction could ever contain. And this storm was only just beginning.